The streets of South Central Los Angeles were already hard in the late 1960s. Poverty, violence, racial tensions, and limited opportunities shaped the lives of countless young people. For many teenagers, survival depended on strength, reputation, and loyalty. In that world, one young man stood out. His name was Stanley Tookie Williams. He was physically imposing, fearless, and charismatic. People listened when he spoke. They followed when he moved. On those streets, influence was a form of power hand. Williams had plenty of it. Then he crossed paths with another influential teenager named Raymond Washington. Their meeting would change the history of Los Angeles. The two young men wanted to unite neighborhood groups and create an organization that offered strength and protection within their communities. But whatever the original intentions may have been, the group they helped create soon grew into something neither of them could control. It became known as the Crips. First, it was a loose alliance, but alliances built around power often evolved as more neighborhoods joined. Rivalries intensified. Violence escalated. The organization spread rapidly across Los Angeles, and with every new set that emerged, control became harder to maintain. What may have begun as an attempt to organize young people eventually became one of the most notorious street gangs in American history. Years later, Williams himself reflected on those early days with regret, saying they had created the monster we were addressing. By the mid-1970s, Williams' reputation had become legendary throughout South Central Los Angeles. Stories about him spread from neighborhood to neighborhood. Some were undoubtedly exaggerated, but together they built an image of someone few people wanted to challenge. Yet his life was filled with contradictions. During parts of this period, he worked with young people through community outreach efforts, even while remaining deeply involved in gang life, as though two different versions of Stanley Williams existed. One wanted to help young people, the other continued down a path of violence and intimidation. Then came 1979. Everything changed. Williams was arrested and charged with 4 murders committed during 2 separate robberies. Prosecutors described him as a ruthless killer. Williams denied the accusations and maintained his innocence throughout his life. After a lengthy trial, a jury found him guilty. He was sentenced to death. For many people, the story seemed finished. A notorious gang leader had been convicted. Justice had been served, but the chapter that followed would become the most surprising part of his life. Death row is designed to be a place of waiting. Days become months, months become years, years become decades. Most people assume hope disappears there. Yet, during more than 20 years inside a prison cell, Williams underwent a transformation that few expected. He began reflecting on the life he had lived. He thought about neighborhoods torn apart by gang violence, thought about children growing up believing gang violence was normal. He thought about the legacy he had helped leave behind. Change did not happen overnight. It happened slowly, one decision at a time. Instead of giving orders, he began writing, working with co-authors. Williams produced children's books and educational materials warning young people about gangs, violence, and the consequences of the choices he had made because he remained on death row. Much of this work was done through letters and collaboration with people outside prison. His message was simple: don't repeat my mistakes. Teachers introduced his books in classrooms. Community organizations shared his writings. Supporters argued that even from a prison cell, Williams was helping save lives. His messages were well received by community groups. Some activists even nominated him for peace-related honors because of his anti-gang efforts. Yet, not everyone was convinced. Critics argued that no amount of good work could erase the suffering caused by the Crips or the murders for which he had been convicted of. Williams continued to maintain his Innocence. Supporters said that an innocent man should never be forced to confess. Opponents argued that genuine redemption required accepting responsibility. Then the debate became larger than one prisoner. The debate became a national argument about a very difficult question. The question is, can a person truly change? And if they can, what should society do about it? His efforts earned him 5 Nobel Peace Prize nominations and 1 Nobel Prize in Literature nomination. Remarkable legacy that continues to spark debate about redemption, justice, and the power of change. From a death row cell, Stanley Tookie Williams transformed from a feared gang founder into an anti-gang advocate. The transformation caught national attention. Supporters pointed to his work as proof that redemption was possible. How many people on death row, they asked, were actively trying to save lives? Should redemption affect punishment? Or should justice remain unchanged regardless of what happens afterward? As Williams' execution date approached, celebrities, religious leaders, anti-death penalty advocates, and community activists urged California officials to spare his life. They argued that executing a man who had spent years trying to steer young people away from gangs served no public good. Families of the victims disagreed. Supporters of the death sentence believed accountability could not be erased by later acts of service. Rehabilitation do not cancel justice. The nation watched. Television crews gathered outside San Quentin. Editorials filled newspapers. People debated not only Stanley Williams, but also the purpose of the criminal justice system itself. Then came the final decision. His appeals failed. On December 12, 2005, the fate of Stanley Tookie Williams rested in the hands of one-man California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger. Across the world, supporters pleaded for mercy, believing the former gang founder had become a genuine force for peace. But as the clock counted down, the governor made his decision. He denied Williams' plea for clemency. After more than 2 decades on death row, and just hours before his scheduled execution, the last hope of redemption was extinguished with the stroke of a pen. Inside San Quentin State Prison, Stanley Tookie Williams was executed by lethal injection. He was 51 years old. His life had ended. The debate had not. More than 20 years later, people continue to argue over what Stanley Williams represents. To some, he is a warning about gangs, violence, and the devastating consequences of choices made in youth. To others, he is proof that people are capable of profound change, even after living lives marked by violence. To many, he is both. Perhaps that is why his story still matters. History often prefers clear heroes and obvious villains. Stanley Tookie Williams was neither. He helped create an organization that evolved into one of America's most violent street gangs. Later, from a prison cell, he devoted years to warning young people not to follow the same path. He inspired fear, then he inspired hope. Whether one sees him as guilty or innocent, redeemed or unforgiven, his life leaves behind a question that remains deeply uncomfortable. If a person completely becomes different to whom they once was, how should the world judge them? The answer depends on who is telling the story, and perhaps that is why, decades after his death, Stanley Tookie Williams remains one of the most debated figures in modern American history.